Hi, are you doing your beginning joints, a half flap, like a corner half flap or a cross half flap? And you're making, I'm not going to say errors, but challenges. You might be facing a couple of little challenges. I'm going to do a cross half flap for you, and I'm going to do some common challenges that you might face and how you might be able to use some techniques to correct them as you're going. Because I think they're the ways that we learn, by making plenty of mistakes and doing loads of practice instead of just watching someone that can do it and getting a bit frustrated. Why the hell can't we do it first time? Because it doesn't happen first time is the reality. It takes a number of times to do it and to get it. And even then, still making mistakes. But it's being able to correct the mistakes. And I'll just go through a couple of techniques on how to do a corner cross half flap and have some errors in it as well, and how to correct. So once you've done the cross half flap, that actually will set you up for doing 3 of the most common starting beginning joints. You'd be able to do a corner, which is in another video, then go straight on to doing the cross half flap. If you've done both of those, you'll cover 3 joints, because then you'll also get your T half flap. Double check your measurements before you're going to start cutting. Working drawing, red goes on the bottom, that's our base. That one goes on top. We've got the lines coming across here. We've marked out our waist. Hopefully we'll cut it correctly now. Double, triple, quadruple check. Let's cut the base first. I don't need a bench hook anymore because I'm not going to cut all the way through the timber. So we're going to use the vise. And we're going to level this up that our baseline is along here along the bench. And that's quite secure. Get our saw in our waist side. We're going to cut on the waist side of that line. Keeping the saw horizontal along here, the blade, the teeth should be right as well. So we're quite close to that line now. I'm going to cut both shoulders first. So having cut down along both of those shoulders, we're going to then cut a lot of lines in here. Every 2 to 3 mil, we're going to cut down here. It's handy to have a couple of bits of scrap to make use of them. So in the vise, I'm going to put 2 pieces of scrap in here. Then I'm going to put this on the line here. So when I cut, I won't be cutting into my bench or into the vise. I'm going to be cutting all the way down to the line. Now, I'm doing this because this is helpful for the beginners that are starting out, because you want to get as close to that line as you possibly can. And you might as well use as many jigs, tools, tricks as you can. So when I'm cutting down here, I know if I fit that line or I fit those timbers, that's when you got to stop. Pretty close to that. After you've done it multiple times, you'll be picking that up without the extra bits of timber in there. This might seem like a long process doing this. It is. It's actually faster when we come to the chiseling. It's very tempting to cut out 3 cuts and make it one big lump. But when you do that, you're more likely to split the timbers on the end. If you want to get an accurate piece, it takes a little while to do more cuts, but it's actually then makes the chiseling far easier. I find this really satisfying. I like doing this. When that's done and that's cut out at that stage, you get your chisel, pop it in the last one. They just break out nicely. Because I've fixed this on my line, I can leave it in there and I can start chiseling that out now. Now when I'm chiseling it out, I'm going to work with the flat of that chisel against this timber. I can peel out a little of that. I'm only going to go 2/3 of the way across, because if I go too far, I could end up splitting the back of that timber. So I'll work my way 2/3 this way, turn the timber 2/3 back. Well, you can see in here the fibers start to break up. So I'm going to take my chisel, hold it by the neck, firm grip on that, use the back of that chisel, and I'm going to tilt that blade at a slight angle and cut down into those fibers, and then angle that way and cut across into the fibers. When we see it from this side, we're going to go down here and it's tilted. I'm going to drag across this way, and then I'm going to drag across there. And that cuts those fibers in there. So when I break into it, they should easily cut out. But again, you want to have control over your chisel, not that it kicks all the way out. There's the fibers coming up. Let's cut them. Sharp chisel down. Let's turn that one round. We're pretty close onto that line. That's lifting up there. This is where I want my chisel to cut into those. And that makes that come out nice and easy. Get a little closer to my line there. One part of it done. At this stage, let's check that this will actually slot in. That's going to be, if anything, a tight fit. And ideally, it doesn't fit. So we can make this a little bigger afterwards. So it's not too big. It's not shaking around. So good. Let's sort that out in a moment. Let's go through the other one. When I'm doing this with my students in a full-time class and they're watching, I have to tell them stories. It's not all that entertaining watching someone saw something for a while and you're getting hot, I'm getting hot, and it's cold in here. So you need to tell them some stories, but a bit different when we're on video. Right, let's pop that one in there. That's satisfying. Nice. So on this one, when I've put so many cuts into it as well, I'm not using a mallet. I purposely did this, trying to avoid using the mallet. It gives you better, as you're learning, your control over the chisel and still practicing that. And the saw cuts into that is really warms you up. Now, that's in there. There's no need to hold this out here. People love forcing that. You force that and goes in there. It's absolutely awful. The vise is going to hold that. Both hands behind the chisel. Sure. Right in those corners is when you get your pieces in together and they wedge very hard and they're almost going. You might have cut the majority of this down nice and flat, but then not cleaned out here in the corners. So before you go put your pieces together, clean out those corners right in there. to get any excess fibers out. So we can see our line, and we're going to be fairly close to it. Let's see if these match up. That's a bit tight, which is good. Now, that's perfect. I wanted to show you this. So when I've got it lined up like this, we take a sharp pencil and we're going to watch and see, have we cut on the waist side of our line? Yes, and yes. So when we have that over, we're going to look at what point is it a little out. So we can make this bigger. So our join timber isn't hitting right. It's a little small, which is good. Too small, we can cut a little more off. If it was too big, can't really glue it in so easy. So that's just what we want. Now to fix that up, we could force it in, but we're not going to force it in. We're going to take a little more off of this one. We're going to see which one needs to come out most. We're going to go with the left one. We're going to secure that in the vise. We're going to put scrap timber with a nice square edge up pretty close to that line. Get more clamps, pop that on there. Now, if you have a very sharp chisel, you could pare that down and cut down there. If I cut that, that is a fraction too big. Using this square edge of that timber, you can hold the back of the blade against there and clean that down. And if it's sharp enough, that will cut through there. So we should be able to see on this one, very little that's going to come out of that. If your chisel isn't sharp enough, or if it's too big, what you do is you take your saw against that edge, pop it on there, and you're going to run that down with a saw blade. And you'll be able to cut that down. So that's a couple of options. And that's how you correct that error. We'll do this. This one is actually sharp enough. So I say error, I meant challenge. That highlights the importance of having a nice, sharp chisel. That now slots in there. The other one slots in. Don't worry, that one fits. Clamp those together. That's a very tight fit. So let's check this against our drawing. We've got a top here. There's our solid lines going through, and we've got the base on it. So we followed the drawing. It's very tight on one, and there's a slight gap on the other one. So that gap there is a little too big. And if we take a really close look at that, we'll see I cut a fraction beyond the waistline. So this is what happens when we have cut beyond the waistline. So you want to cut within the waistline, and this one was cut too far in, but that's how you can actually correct it. And then we've got a very tight gap. Now, they're also not flush here. For this demonstration, that's good, because what we're going to do is take a little more off of those timbers and be able to get them closer. If you've taken too much off and you're too keen, it'll be flush the wrong way, it'll be too small, which you can't really add back to it. So at least we can take a little more off now. So we're going to look at these and see which one of these needs to get closer to the line. How much more I need to clean that out. So we can see our line here. We can go down a little further on that one. And that's it. You keep working your way down. On our edge sides, we're going to check to see if that's square. We're pretty okay there. If it's not square, we'll try and adjust it. You'd be able to bend it out. And then you'd look at your lines to see why it's not and how accurate you can get it. You can also see we're not exactly flush here, so we can take a little bit more out. And that's ideal. That's what you want to do. So at this stage, you want to gradually build your way down. So there we have our cross half lap. And once you've done your cross half lap and your corner half lap, you then have all the skills you need to have done a T half lap. The cross half lap of the cross halving joint. If you followed me this far and you've followed the whole video through, thanks very much. Greatly appreciated. I hope it's helped. Next, we'll move on to recesses, and if you want to check those out, that'd be great. More to follow.